Here we go. Happy Wednesday, you guys. Happy State of the Industry Day. Today is not a surprise because we said what we were going to be doing this month. So we're going to run through some quick announcements before we get into the main content, because there's just a few exciting things that we want to talk about today, in addition to the regularly scheduled content. I am Katie Hardman, the COO of the Experience Brokerage Network, and I am joined by my co-hosts, Leslie and Chris. Leslie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I am Leslie Hilbert. I'm the general manager of the Experience Brokerage Network, which, as you know, encompasses 4 incredible Keller Williams market centers here in the state of Oregon and over 600 amazing KW agents. And then, of course, our amazing OP, Chris Suarez, who we're going to hear more from. He's the big show today. So stay tuned for more information from Chris.
You'll hear from him in a second. And the reason that we always do this is because we're always welcoming new family members to our Experience Brokerage Network. So we have 14 new agents joining us this month. So we want to say a huge welcome to this group of individuals. And we're excited to be in business with you, and we're proud to be in business with you. So thank you to everyone who has joined us, and welcome them. If you see a name that's unfamiliar, we hope that you welcome them with open arms. Hugs are appropriate on Valentine's Day, right? Or maybe fist bumps or elbow bumps, something like that.
Hugs, high fives, elbow bumps.
That's right. That's right.
Whatever your preference.
Whatever your preference. I just wanted to remind everybody that we do a daily dialogue practice Monday through Thursday. The update to this is it is now 8:45 to 9:30. We bumped it up 15 minutes because we found that 30 minutes just wasn't enough time to get the actual dialogue practice in. So now it's 45 minutes instead of 30. So we hope that you guys will jump on a couple minutes early to do a daily dialogue practice with us and with Noah Craig-Rude, who leads it. If you're in the Portland metro area tomorrow, we just wanted to put this out to everybody that our very own Amy McLeod is teaching a buyer broker presentation, and really on know your value when working with buyers. Fun fact about Amy is she was named for 2023 top negotiator. So not only is it a great class, but you're learning from a top negotiator, and it will be live at the Keller Williams Sunset Corridor office. So if you happen to be in the area or want to be in the area tomorrow, we hope that you guys will join us for this class at our KWSC location. Okay, and it is not too late to still get a ticket to Family Reunion if you are on the fence or have just decided or will be deciding that you want to go to Family Reunion. We want to put this out there one more time. Tickets are still being sold. Reach out to someone in your leadership team if you want to go, and we will help you track down a ticket and make sure that you have all the information on where to go, what to go to, who to see, all of those things coming very soon. And the reason I'm also bringing this up is because if you're with the Experience Brokerage Network, you will be getting a know before you go email with some important details about big events. One of them being our welcome reception, which will be Sunday at 4 p.m. At the Mandalay Bay. So we will be sending out information on that just so everybody across the state of Oregon in our brokerages gets to meet each other as we come in. We will then head over to the Keller Williams welcome reception, but we wanted a chance for everybody to meet each other and get to cheers or high five or hug as we start our journey into Family Reunion. And that's not all. For those who can't make it, there are 2 really cool opportunities that I hope you take advantage of. We will be live streaming in each one of our market centers on Tuesday, the 27th, our vision speech and state of the company, which is with Gary Keller and Mark Willis. Honestly, this is the one that every single person says they can't miss. And so if you can't be there in person, the next thing is to hop into your market center and attend the watch party. This is information that you'll use in your buyer and seller presentations all year long. It gives you really good information to use in talking with your clients and thinking about the state of the company and the state of the industry throughout 2024. And then the other amazing event, you'll probably want to bring tissues to this one, is our inspirational morning on Thursday from 9 to 10:30. We will be live streaming those ones or that one in our market center as well. And Mo Anderson and Mark Willis will be telling inspirational stories about Keller Williams agents and other really inspiring people to well, I guess it's perfect that we're talking about this on Valentine's Day, talk about the culture of KW and the love that we share amongst our agents and our community. So both really powerful, really cool events to show off the culture of KW and the value of our organization. So if you can't be in there in person, please, please, please talk to your leadership team, come into the market center and see these amazing events and mastermind with some agents, because there will be things to talk about that come out of these. Okay. And one more announcement. This has been, you guys, a long time coming. I realize that, but we finally have secured a partnership with Forewarn. So if you remember us talking about this 6 months ago, gosh, it might have been 8 months ago now. We have finally finalized the partnership. So if you are interested or have filled out the interest form in the past, you will be hearing from me, and we will be sending out some forms to get you signed up. Forewarn is a tool, like it says, it's the instant due diligence app. It helps you verify identities, look up criminal history, confirm financial data, invalidate current assets. So this is a tool you can use in your business before you go out and meet potential clients, if you're getting people coming to you and they're interested, or someone refers you someone you don't know them. This is a really cool tool to use before you go out and meet with somebody. It's also kind of fun just to stalk people. So if you are interested in signing up for Forewarn, if you sign up for a individual membership, it's $25 a month. However, with our partnership, you can get it for $12 a month or $120 a year. You choose. Kind of like our caps, you choose. So if you are interested, Leslie has dropped the link to sign up or send your information to us saying you're interested. If you filled out this form in the past, I have your information and I'll be reaching out to you. But if you're now interested or haven't filled it out in the past, send us your information. We will be reaching out to get you signed up and get you the app. But this is a really cool partnership that has been a long time coming, really excited about. So yay, one more partnership. Okay. Anything else, Leslie, before we dive in?
I think that's it. We covered a lot of ground there, Katie. So I think we're ready just to turn this thing over to Chris.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing. You guys know that last month we covered the NAR home buyers profile. Today we're talking about home sellers. So Chris, thank you for coming back again and sharing the other half of the conversation with us. We're excited to hear from you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. We spent about 45 minutes a few weeks back going through sort of what we took away from the NAR profile report. What data do we have about buyers, who they are, how they acted, what was important to them, how do we connect with them, what are they looking for, sort of everything that could shape our really value proposition and business plan and conversations with buyers. And today we're going to spend an equal amount of time talking about the other half of our business, which is sellers. And I would say that it's the equally important side of our business. Some would say it's the more important side. And I would argue that if we don't have buyers, well, then what are we going to do with our sellers? And so a naturally equal business is probably the more and most stable business that we can build, right? Making sure that we are optimizing for a 50-50 business, moving towards half of our business coming from the seller side, half of our business coming from the buyer side. I know that there are some of us that sort of optimize for or works exclusively with sellers or exclusively with buyers. But here's the deal. Whether we do that or not, understanding what the other side of the transaction is looking for or where they're coming from or what they're doing will be helpful for us as well. So what I did was went through the hundreds of pages and graphs of that NAR profile report and pulled together just a series of graphs that I thought we'd talk about today, and specifically to the seller side of our business. So I'll sort of share just sort of an overview of the report. When we look at the business in of itself, or all sellers combined, sort of younger boomers made up one of the largest shares of home sellers last year, at about 30% of all home sellers. There's a median age in that group of about 63 years old, and a median income in that group, interestingly enough, of about $90,000 a year. So not well above a median for most areas, but that's who was selling their home. Older boomers made up the second largest share of sellers, which was about 22%. So you can see over 50% of all sellers, fell within that range of about 63 years old to 71 years old. A big group of sellers fell within that range. And we expected that, right? A decade ago, we said that was going to happen. And sure enough, following sort of demographic trends and actions, we saw that come to fruition. As we look at just overall, what was the commonly cited reason to actually sell? 21% said, well, it was just to be closer to friends and family. Like, it was a desire to sell, not actually I had to sell. And that was interesting to me. In a really, really difficult time, emotion still moved people more than fact, right? Emotion still moved people to sell more than a job transfer, or I can't afford the payment, or familial change and I need an extra bedroom, or divorce and I'm not going to live with you anymore. Like, the fact is being closer to friends and family, the emotion of the home drove people to action. I think that's a big takeaway for us as well. Sellers typically lived in their home for about 10 years before selling. That was the median, up from 9 years the year before. So we're staying in our homes a little bit longer, not dramatically, but a little bit longer, and that's to be expected as well. And the group that moved the quickest, no surprise there, it's young millennials. They stayed in their home for about 4 years. So keep that in mind, right? Many of us have worked with young millennials for the last 5, 6, 7 years, and the average millennial only stayed in their home for 4. So we have missed an opportunity if we haven't developed or kept that relationship over the last 4 years. And you'll see from some data that we haven't done a great job at that. 86% of sellers work with real estate agents. We're going to talk a little bit about why that was the case, what they wanted from that agent, but also what they were willing to pay for that agent. I was talking with one of our agents. I think she's on today, but yesterday we had a great call about sort of just the narrative in the industry, or the narrative from sometimes our competitors, and the narrative from other people in the industry saying, well, gosh, like you're just going to see lower and lower and lower and lower and lower commission rates. So, you better get another job, or you better find another way to make money. The fact is data doesn't support that fear based strategy of getting people to move or act or do something different. Like, sellers consistently are willing to pay for what you do for them. Now, we're going to look at some trends, or we're going to look at a few things that are changing, and we should be aware of that. But the fact is, from a seller's perspective, what they're willing to pay for you to deliver the value they're looking for has not changed a whole lot over the last year or 2 or 3 or 5. Last year, almost 20% of home sellers reduced their asking price at least once before selling. Just a good number to know, right? All of us may have listings right now that have not reduced their price. Sometimes it makes people feel better that they're not doing something unique. It isn't just them, but 20%, right? 1 out of 5 homes had to reduce their price in order to get sold last year. And last number I'll share, and then we're going to actually dive into the sort of the graphs and the data, and we can ask some questions along the way. But 72% of sellers said they were very satisfied with the selling process. So, ultimately you did a good job, right? 72% said very, very satisfied. Interestingly enough, that's not wildly different than the percentage of buyers that we learned a month ago that said, I am very, very satisfied. And yet when we look at how many sellers use the same agent that helped them buy the home, when they went to sell the home, 4 years later, 6 years later, 10 years later, or the average 11 years later, we kind of lost touch. We didn't remind them that they were very satisfied. We didn't stay in relationship with them and sort of capitalize on that satisfaction. We'll even talk about how many referrals each very satisfied seller gave on average. to their agent, which is a little bit discouraging as well. All right. But most of this is going to be a positive conversation, I promise. So for those of you looking at like, hey, who should I reach out to? By the way, probably not a good lead in to say, hey, how old are you? But it's good to know sort of where the market is and where it's coming from. This is the average age of home sellers. You'll see that younger boomer generation jumping out at 30% of all homes sold were in that 58 to 67 years old, 22% were 76 years old, 68 to 76. Like that is such a massive market for us. If we're not communicating well with them, by the way, if we think we're going to come in here and text away and put our AI assistant on engaging with a 60 to 76-year-old, you may be mistaken. Are those tools valuable? Phenomenally valuable. But understand that tool is not going to communicate with everybody. So remember, even if you don't like picking up the phone or you don't want someone picking up the phone and calling you, it doesn't mean that's how everybody communicates. Fair? So that is the lesson from this slide. Pick up the phone, make phone call, get face-to-face, get voice-to-voice, stop by their house. People in different age groups communicate in different ways, and we have to meet people where they are. Here's the size of the home purchase compared to the home they recently sold. Here's what I found really, really interesting. And maybe this is your experience too. How many people this year had clients that said, hey, I want to downsize, right? They're downsizers. And what happened when they actually went to downsize? They didn't downsize a whole lot. Like when push came to shove, their dining room still had to fit, and the couch that they loved still had to fit, and they still wanted a guest room in case John came home from college or from work, or like they actually, right, when you look at it, went from an average home size of 1,880 square feet to 1,850 square feet. Was it worth it? I don't know. But the reality is the emotion of wanting to do something drives action and activity. So just keep that in mind, right? Interestingly enough, quite a few people, like look at the average size in 68 to 76 years old. Like they actually did not downsize at all. The average person that sort of moved towards a different house actually added 110 square feet to their living situation, in that older boomer generation. The biggest downsize was 77 to 97. And that sort of obviously makes sense. But then you look at, age groups and what conversations should we be having, in that 24 to 32, they added 530 square feet. That's a substantial jump, right? In 33 to 42, they added 620 square feet. Those are those move up buyers. So just interesting data for us and keeping in mind when people say they're going to increase or they want to downsize it, it may not mean you should show them homes that are 1,000 square foot smaller, because we may hit some walls on our showings. Like they may actually disengage from the emotion of making that move because they're just not willing to give up as much space as they think they are. Here's the primary reason for selling their home. And you see all sellers combined, 21% said, hey, I just want to move closer to friends and family. Which is an awesome thing. Interestingly enough, we've done some sort of deep work together as an organization, as a company. I've shared the Harvard happiness study with this group, right? The longest longitudinal study on behavior. And what is that, 3 decades, three generations, almost 4 generations old study now tell us that the number one connection to health is and longevity is actually relationship. So I think from a big picture perspective, I love the number one reason to sell being like, hey, I just want to get back to friends and family. So I would say if you have anybody in your database that just had a baby, figure out where their parents live and find out what are they selling to move closer to the baby, right? What are they selling to move closer to their kids? And so we've typically seen that sort of familial shift as sort of younger family members move into a city. Chances are a few years later, people follow. So, number one reason they want to move closer to friends or family, remember that reason, bring it up. Hey, I found a home in that neighborhood closer to your friends and family. Second reason, it was due to retirement. So here's what I'll share on that. I think a lot of times we go to sell a house and we forget to refer those sellers to where they are retiring to. They're probably not retiring to Multnomah County. I'm just taking a stab at that based on the tax consequences of living here. But the reality is they might retire to Clackamas County or Washington County or maybe out of state. So interestingly enough, as I look at profit and loss statements of a lot of real estate agents every single week and every single month, what I see is referrals going out. Like, in other words, like, hey, thanks for that referral. I'm going to pay you 25 or 30%, which is awesome. We love that business. But I don't see a lot of referral income coming in, meaning that we're selling people's houses here in Portland, but we're not placing these referrals across our brokerages well. So focus on that, right? If they're moving due to retirement and you have a seller, have the conversation. Where are you going? Can I get you connected with someone there? Have you already talked to someone? You have. Would you like a second opinion of someone that focuses on that neighborhood or specializes in retirement homes? Like, just have that conversation. Number three, we've seen this, right? Number three reason to sell in certain neighborhoods, it's become less desirable. Please don't bring that up. You're going to get sued if you do, but listen to people, ask why they might be selling. I'm not saying to target neighborhoods that you feel are less desirable today than they were, but door knocking is always a great way to find some sellers. The next common reason to sell, it's just too small, right? It's just too small. And that is that younger age demographic that's really, really looking to grow. So again, study this. Why are they selling? Where do I find those people? What groups may they be in? What part of my sphere is connected to people that are looking to grow, or the home is too small, or the home is too large, or look at the fifth one, change in family situation. Could be marriage, could be divorce, could be a child, but family situation is always a big reason why. About 9% of all sellers sold because of the family situation. How long are they staying? Well, obviously this changes based on age, but the reality is the majority of people are staying on average about 10 years in their home. And that is gotten longer over the last 4 or 5 years, right? If we remember back, this used to be about 6 years. People stayed in a home 6 or 7 years, went up to 8, went up to 9. Now we're up to 10. People are staying in their homes longer. There's some real benefit to that. They're building equity. If they're building equity, they have something to do with that equity when it's time to sell, and you can help them. But it also means that we have to get better and better and better and better at staying in relationship with people long-term. I was talking to my team this week. We listed a couple houses in Southwest Portland and Portland Heights. It was a individual we met back in 2015 online. He bought a house in 2018, so we stayed in touch with that person for 3 years online. And then now he's selling that house, right? Like another 7 years later. It's a 12-year relationship with this individual. And by the way, in the middle of that, we lost relationship and he bought a different house worth $1.7 million, not with us. So there's lessons learned in this conversation of tenure in a home, and what do we need to do to build relationships for long periods of time, or provide value for long periods of time. That is when technology is your friend. That is when using campaigns and follow up and systems help us have relationships with more people. Fair? So tenure in home is just something for us to be aware of. How do they sell the home? Well, 86% of sellers used an agent or a broker. 10% were for sale by owner. We talked about that last month, by the way, that even within that FSBO category, 50% of those FSBOs actually already knew their buyer. So it's a little bit false number because they sold it to a family member, they sold it to their friend, they sold it to the neighbor that wanted the home next door, they sold it to someone they knew at work. That happens, right? And that's awesome. Like, we support that. That made that transition easy for them, which is great. But the reality is if they didn't know the buyer, only 5% sold their home on their own successfully, which means, right, we have an 86-5 ratio of sellers that are choosing to work with agents. And the majority start right out of the gate. About 1% that sold with agents actually started first on their own, and then they converted and they became a listed property. They moved from FSBO to listed. So this is a great sign for us as we look in terms of what percentage of actual addressable market, people that are going to move out of a home, actually engage and say, yes, I want a professional to help me. And those that chose the professional, here's their satisfaction rating. 72% of people said they were very satisfied, right? 19% said they were somewhat satisfied, which is a little bit discouraging, as I talked about last month. I would love for all of that to move to very satisfied. I think you're probably one conversation or two conversations or one or two check-ins away from making someone somewhat satisfied into very satisfied. So we could change that overnight. We could change that this year if, as a group, as an organization, as an industry, we focused on it, which means that 91% of people that worked with an agent as a seller actually were satisfied with the process. Let's just call it that. We can do a better job. But interestingly enough, these numbers were higher than buyers, right? And I would argue that that's largely because a lot could go wrong in 2023 for buyers. A lot of buyers had multiple deals fall apart. They got beat out on 4 or 5 homes in 2023. It was just a tough year to be a buyer. So satisfaction typically goes down when things are tough, but that's also a lesson for us. That also teaches us, helps us learn that we gotta make the experience a little bit smoother. We have to meet people there, sort of commiserate with them at times, and sort of come alongside of them and help them through that difficult process in other times. And when we see sort of that dip, right? We've read a few books from Chip and Dan Heath on customer service in the past in our organization. When we see that sort of dip happen in a transaction, and chances are we sort of fill that up real quick. We make that situation better. We address it. We don't avoid the conversation, so that we can, at the end of the day, at the end of the transaction, have a very satisfied customer. All right, so that's sort of demographically what's going on with the actual seller. Now let's just have a conversation about selling real estate, the process, and the real estate professional. This is sort of the data of our industry. So let's begin. This is the method that sellers use to find real estate agents. Potentially the most strategic chart that we'll look at this morning together. Why? Because if we're looking for sellers, why not go where they're looking for their agent? It's like you want to find a date and you like boys or girls that hang out at bars, then go to the bar. But if you like boys and girls that hang out at the dog park, don't go to the bar, go to the dog park. Like, go to where that might have been a terrible analogy, but go to where people are looking for you, right? It's going to make the process easier. So the number one place that someone found their real estate agent, it was referred by, or they are, a friend, a neighbor, or a relative. Yesterday, I had a conversation with a seller in Forest Heights, and she had called us because her neighbor, who we helped, the neighbor around the corner who we helped, said, "Hey, you should call them." Now, she also called one of her friends, but you get a seat at the table, or you get an at bat because her neighbor said, "Hey, you should call them." 36% of sellers chose their agent because of that. So what do we do with that? Well, knowing that number would be great to sort of lead in and call our past clients. And it's a reason to call our friends. It's a reason to call our relatives. And sometimes we feel uncomfortable asking for business. Hey, are you selling today or this year? Or do you need a real estate agent? But actually, sometimes providing some data makes that phone call easier. Hey, I'm reaching out because I was just looking at some industry data, and I realized that 36% of sellers that I work with actually get referred to the agent that they choose by their friends and neighbors and relatives. And I thought, gosh, if you have friends and neighbors and relatives that might be selling, I would love to be that agent that you refer. If you think of anyone, could I count on you? for giving them my name. That's it, right? Like I'm reaching out, not asking for their business, but asking for them to sort of put in a good word for me, to help me when the opportunity arises with their friends, neighbors, and relatives. 36% of our business should naturally come from there, because if we have friends and we have neighbors and we have relatives, or we have clients that have friends, neighbors, and relatives, they should be talking about us. 27% of sellers use the agent that they helped, that helped them buy a home. Now, here's where things get a little bit weird for me. Like 85% of buyers used an agent to buy a home. 70% of those people were very satisfied. Yet when it came time to sell, 27% of them actually used the agent that helped them buy the home. So like if you sold 10 homes last year to buyers, that means on into the future, 10 years from today, only 3 of them are going to list with you. You're going to get 7, right, hits on your confidence in 10 years from today because you didn't follow up when you see, oh gosh, I sold them their home and they listed it with Eric. I sold them that home and they listed it with Mary. Shoot, I sold them that home and they listed it with Dana. I sold them that home and they listed it with Jordan. Hey, I sold them that home and they listed it with Ted. Now, Ted, Dana, Mary, Jordan are all happy about that. But you're the one that should be happy if they were wildly or very, very satisfied with you and they're going to sell in 10 years. We shouldn't lose 70% of our future business. We have to build our businesses for the future, assuming we are here. Now, built into that 27%, I get it. Some of those people bought a home and their brother became a realtor in the last decade, or their mom became a realtor in the last decade, or their best friend became a realtor in the last decade, or their neighbor became a realtor in the last decade. So what happened? Well, they may optimize for the first, right? First choice, which is, friend, neighbor, relative. But the majority did not. The majority just didn't get followed up with. So we need to focus on the number 2 place to find sellers, but we also should be calling every one of our buyers that bought a home 4 years ago or 5 years ago. Whether you stop calling them or not, just start. It's okay. And then you'll notice from there, it's kind of a broad range of places to find sellers. Personal contact, which means you're cold calling, like you're reaching out, you're circle prospecting, right? You're emailing people that you find online. You get a referral from another real estate agent. That's why I love our network. A lot of people move from Southern Oregon to Northern Oregon, right? Or Portland, or move from Portland down to Southern Oregon. Like that happens a lot. Connect with your network. Website, 5% of sellers found their agent online. So not all online leads are buyers, right? Find out, did that buyer have a home to sell? Direct mail, still working, right? Postcards or newsletters or flyers that you might be sending out. And then about 4% was open house or signs, right? So sellers are still walking into homes looking for agents or meeting their agent when they walk through, and you connected with them with real value. So again, method used to find a real estate agent, one of the most important things for us to look at. Number of agents contacted before selecting one to assist. Could we have chosen an easier industry? I mean, truly, like we're not trying out for the Olympics. Like you don't have to run a 2-hour marathon, right? To get into Boston. Like 80% of people only meet with you. Don't screw it up. Like just go in and be friendly. 80% are actually looking for reasons to sign with you. Now, will this change this year? Will it be more competitive? Probably, right? Fewer sellers, right? More agents. But this was 2023. Like we had a lot of agents and very few sellers in 2023. And look, 80% still only interviewed 1, 11% interviewed 2, 91% of listings that you go into, it is you versus you, right? It's like you and one other person. You got a 50-50 shot, even if you're as bad as the next person. So just show up, right? Show up, be confident, bring them through the conversation. We're going to show you basically what your conversation flow needs to be in just a minute based on what sellers want. But this is interesting to me. Like if I'm if my conversion has been a little bit lower than 50%, and I've gone on more than 2 or 3 or 4, I'm going to figure that out real quick. Really, worst case scenario, you should be taking 2 out of 3 because 80% only interviewed you. 11% interviewed 2 people. So even if you lose every competition you're in, 2 out of 3 listings should be yours. Now, if you're losing more than that, that means after they interview you, all of a sudden they're like, well, I better interview someone else. Like I wasn't gonna, but now I'm going to. Concerning, right? So again, this should build our confidence knowing that, hey, if I get to the table, I have a really great shot at earning that business if I show up in an educated way, which I believe every one of our brokers can based on the data and the scripting and the conversations that we have to build us up as salespeople. Did the seller use the same real estate agent for their home purchase? So this is the depressing slide real quick. 61% said, nope, I used a new agent. Like I didn't use the agent that sold this to me. 39% of all sellers said yes. Here's my takeaway. What is the highest percentage of people that use the agent that helped them buy the home? Do you notice what happens here? The highest percentage is the 24 to 32-year-olds. Why? Because they sold on average much faster than the 33 to 42-year-olds. But by the way, the 33 to 42-year-olds sold pretty quick as well. So you see what happens as time increases between the time they purchased and the time they sold, what percentage of people use their same agent? Like, doesn't that tell you what's happening? That is what's happening. We are just losing touch. We do good the first year. We do maybe okay the second year. We're holding it together for the third year. We give up on the fourth year. Now, granted, some of those agents are no longer in the business 3 or 4 or 5 years later. So I understand that's part of these statistics. But I look at that, there's a descending rate of using the same agent, the longer it takes for them to sell. If we go back to chart number 2, like when we saw like the longest period, like that arc of like, oh, I'm going to stay in my house for 13 years, 14 years. Well, guess who it was? It was the 58 to 67-year-olds. And look at the percentage of people between 58 to 67 that use the same agent. It's the lowest percentage. So it really is a time conversation for us. It really is a follow-up conversation. There's no other conversation when it comes to getting referrals of buyers that are turned sellers. Pretty interesting data to look at and feel, sort of find where our guilt is. I mean, not guilt. I don't want you living in guilt, but where we are the guilty party in that instance. Fair? Like it's a really important conversation to have with ourselves. Like how well are we following up? Okay, so we're going to an interview, right? You got to the table. 80% of them are going to hire you if you actually show up and explain to them what you're going to do in a meaningful and professional way. Here's what they want you to do. So this should be your conversation flow. The number one, this is ranked in, hey, what was the number one thing they wanted? So at the top of the list of most people, help pricing the home, spend some time there. Right? Show that you know the comps. Talk about the homes you've walked through. Talk about the conversations you had with the listing agent about why that home sold at that price, which seems to be an anomaly. Talk about the conversation you had about that price because it seems to be incredibly low. Like show up in an educated way in helping them price the home. Chances are that is what they want most help with. Spend some time there. Second, they want help marketing their home to potential buyers, right? Not to real estate agents. They want help. They want to know what you're doing to market their home to potential buyers. Who are you calling? Where will this home be? How well are you on? How well is your exposure online? How do you connect with potential buyers? What conversations are you having with agents about their buyers? How do you sell the home at the open house if buyers walk through that open house? All these sort of conversations I'm having specifically. Why? Just to make sure that they know I'm going to market the home to potential buyers, because that's what 23% of sellers said was most important to them. Third thing, time frame. Okay, well, it doesn't mean that they want it done the quickest possible, like most people do, but ask them, what does timing look like for you? What's perfect for you? How I want to meet your expectations in the time frame that you'd like to sell the home. When do you need to move by? When is the job? When do you want to be close to your friends or family? Like, what's important to you about payments around that time? Like, all that is time frame. Have some conversations about timing, because that was the third thing that came up as number one was time. Help finding a buyer for the home, right? We've talked about marketing to buyers. Now help finding a buyer for the home. Between that, 36% of sellers actually want to talk about, where's my buyer? Do you know my buyer? What do you do to connect with buyers? How many buyers are in your database? Do you know that? Can you talk to them about what technology you use to take their home and filter it through the 3,000, 4,000, 7,000, 15,000, 23,000 people in your database? Use those numbers. Talk to them about what you're doing to find that buyer. 11% said, hey, I know what the value of my home is today, but I really want my agent to talk to me about, should I do anything to fix up the home to sell it for more? Have that conversation. Whether you think they should fix it or not, address it. Hey, I'm not going to have you do the kitchen countertops, because the reality is you're probably going to put about $9,000 or $12,000 into it, and it might increase your value by $9,000 or $12,000. The inventory is such that we can probably sell it without making it look that pretty. Now, that's your prerogative. That's your consulting with that seller, but at least address the conversation. Help with paperwork, inspection, preparing, right? Talk about it. Help with negotiation or dealing with buyers. Interestingly enough, only 6% said that was the most important thing. You know, I think we should talk about it and figure out maybe over time why that isn't more important. I think it's a big part of our value, which obviously sellers aren't looking to you as great negotiators or dealing with the actual buyer for them. That's probably because they don't understand what's going on. And it might be because they look at, if we spend too much time talking about your 100% list price to sales price ratio, it probably doesn't indicate that there's been a whole lot of negotiation going on anyway. But this chart, maybe the second most important chart today, is what do sellers want? And am I touching on those things in my consultation? If you do, I promise 80% of the listings you go on should list with you. What's most important in choosing a real estate agent to sell the home? So this is what they want, right? Pricing and market value and time frames and where's my buyer and let's fix it up and get the inspection done and help me negotiate. And when it comes down to it, when they make a decision about, you know, is it Hannah or is it Andrew? Is it Jody or is it Jim? Like, reputation comes into play. Honesty and trustworthiness comes into play. Friendliness or family comes into play. Knowledge comes into play. Caring personality comes into play. Oh, and by the way, when they're done with that, 4% said the most important thing was commission. So stop thinking that's the most important thing. Fair? Now, do we need to talk about it? Absolutely. Are we going to address it? Absolutely, in just a minute. But the fact is 36% said the most important thing was your reputation. So if you have a good one, you're going to get your fee. The second most important thing is honesty and trustworthiness. So if you're honest and trustworthy and people believe that, guess what? They're going to pay for you. If you're a friend or a family member, interestingly enough, you're cutting them a deal and that's not their biggest that's not their biggest request. It's the fact that you are a family member or you are a friend. And by the way, the only reason why that matters is because of the first two, because hopefully with your friends and family, you have a decent reputation and hopefully your friends and family think you're honest and they trust you. So interestingly enough, character shows up so much more than any other thing. So make sure you don't go in, right, like as this machine scripter that sounds like a machine scripter, because that may be the reason why you're falling into that 20% that interview a second agent or third agent or fourth agent and you're not getting the listing. Speaking of commission, we should be aware of this. First of all, we all know it's always negotiable, right? And I don't care if you bring it up or they bring it up. You were there to negotiate what your fee is for this specific client, right? So 46% of sellers said, actually the real estate agent initiated discussions of compensation, and they talked to me about what they charge. We talked to me about how that might change depending on the situation. Like 46%, only almost half of all sellers said, yeah, my agent brought it up. 22% said, well, actually, I brought it up. And the agent was able, they made it clear to me that they were able to negotiate. Some of them were willing to negotiate. So now we're at 68% of all sellers. Either I brought it up or they brought it up, but we have the conversation of what the fee is, where it goes, what it might be, how we might negotiate. 5% of sellers said they brought it up and the real estate agent was unwilling. Now I don't have an opinion there. I'm not going to say it should be more that we're unwilling. Like I'm not. Like that's your decision. It is your business. But only 5%. I think it's interesting, right? With all the news and all the noise going on, only 5% of sellers said, hey, would you negotiate your fee? And maybe 5% of agents said, no, I'm not negotiable. Which, by the way, like, again, that is your choice. Be careful what you say, but 5%, right, of all sellers said that that's the wall they had. 12% said, oh, I knew commission and fee was negotiated, but I didn't bring up the topic. I knew I could have brought it up, but you know what? Hannah's awesome. Like she said, she charges 5.5%. He said he charges 7%. Like I didn't bring it up. I knew I could have pushed, but I was okay with that. Last thing, client did not know commission and fees could be negotiated, about 15%. 15% said, oh, I didn't realize that. Maybe I should have. But so again, this is an interesting percentage, right? Of 70 somewhat percent of people saying, yeah, I was very, very satisfied. Satisfied negotiating, satisfied not negotiating, satisfied not knowing I could negotiate, satisfied knowing I could, but I didn't even ask. Like, just know that I think we probably put too much pressure on that whole conversation, when in reality, if they're at the table and they're choosing us and we show them what we're doing, well, then establish your value. We talked about this just a little bit earlier. Would seller use the real estate agent again or recommend that agent to other people? 73% said definitely. 12% said probably, right? So 85% of sellers said, yeah, probably or definitely, I'm gonna recommend them to others. Not even just use them again. By the way, they're gonna use you again, hopefully in a decade. But I hope that's not the next time you get business from that person that just said, oh, I would definitely use them again. They're also saying, I would definitely recommend them to others. So are they? I'm going to tell you, like, they don't think of you every day like you think of them every day. They're in their home. They're grateful. 2 weeks later, right, when they're cleaning out gutters and they're figuring out why the smoke detector won't stop chirping and they're calling in someone to fix their oven. Like they're not thinking about, man, my real estate agent, she was amazing. Like they're just thinking about life. We have to think about them and we have to remind them to think about us based on the relationship and what we did. 73% said, I will definitely recommend you to my friends. So what's going on there? We're just not getting that recommendation. Last piece of data I'm going to share in that report said this. It said that of the 73% that said they definitely would recommend that agent again, how many times do you think that they referred that agent? I'm going to read the data for you so you can all cry a little bit after the call and get over it and change what we do. The data says this: the typical seller has recommended their agent once since selling their home. Once every 10 years. It's going to be a cold winter when you get sellers recommended. By the way, they recommended you. It doesn't even mean that person needed to sell or was going to buy or called you or you even know. But when they said, hey, like as you look back since you bought this home, like how many times have you recommended your agent? They thought, did I? Oh yeah, there was that one person I said they should call Allie. Yeah, there was that. I think there was did you? Yeah, honey. Oh yeah, you recommended Chris one time, like one time. It's a problem. They said they definitely would recommend us. We're just not priming that. Now, that is the typical seller. I'm going to give you the good news because this is going to make you smile after our call instead of cry. 37% of sellers, check this out, 37%, clearly not the majority, but we need to find these 37. We need to expand it. We have to know who these 37 are in our world. 37% of sellers said they actually recommended their agent 3 or more times since selling their home. You know who recommended their agent the most? The younger millennial, 24 to 32. That number jumped to 47%. 47% of millennials recommended their agent 3 or more times. Now, for the most part, they're going to be buyers. But for the most part, they actually do want to engage with you. They want to connect with you. They want to help you. They want to build a relationship with you. It's easier. It doesn't mean the boomers don't. They got some deep relationships already, but don't miss the opportunity. If you see yourself working in that framework, right? I saw Hannah said, gosh, I love that. Hannah, you built your business on this, getting 3 to 4 referrals from younger millennials every single time you sell them a home, right? That is the basis of your business. But before we get excited that it happens automatically, it doesn't. We have to ask for it. We have to actually move the needle on the majority of sellers that said, I think I might have referred them once. That's a problem. It's why our businesses don't naturally just exponentially grow year after year after year after year after year. They should. 73% of the time, we should get business from the business even before the 10 years is up when they might engage with us again. Now, the cool thing is, if you're new in this industry, we got a lot of new people and I love it. Do not get discouraged by the media. Do not get discouraged by the news, because here's why. You have the best opportunity. The majority of your sphere and people are probably around your age. They are the younger millennials, which means as interest rates come down, you should be getting them into homes. They will forever be grateful for you to help them on that wealth building journey. We have mortgage programs now with the mortgage company that we own that can get them into homes. And guess what? You got the fastest turnaround to list that house in 4 years. Like, look at the time in the home. Like the average time in the home was 4 to 6 years. So you build this business of now business, today business, first time business for 4 years. You work hard for 4 years. And guess what? If you do your job, in 4 years from now, we're getting repeat referral. In 5 years from now that repeat referral is doubling. In 6 years from now, it's doubling again. In 7 years from now, you see what's happening? That is the beauty of our business. It's a relationship-based business. It is grounded and helped through our technology, but it's still relationship-based. Cool? So over the last 2 months, we often say like, hey, what value do I get from the community I'm in or the neighborhood I choose to build my business in? I look at brokerage as a neighborhood. I hope there is something over the last 2 months that this organization, this company, your leaders have driven or given to you that shows you, hey, how do I find more buyers? How do I connect with buyers? How do I deliver value to buyers? If not, go watch the recording. By the way, in our recap of this month, Katie and Leslie, let's put both recordings in, because maybe we want to go back to the buyer side, and then we'll put the recording in for the seller side. And if someone in your world, on your team, or the person that sits in the office next to you was not on this call, please tell them to show up. Like, truly, we want these calls to not only build our community, but for us to walk away and say, okay, I have something to do this month. I know where to drive this month. I know what conversations to have this month. And by the way, if there's conversations we're not having, like, every one of you should have my cell phone number, right? Reach out to me, say, hey, this is what I think we need. This is what I want us to do. And if you don't have my cell phone number and you're actually engaged and actually listening to me right now, then you'll hear me say, I just put my cell phone number in the chat. So text me, right? Go to your team leader, have the conversation with your team leader, text Leslie, text me. Like, we're all available to you. We realize that the time in the industry in which we're at and where the market is. But I will tell you, there's no better educated real estate agents and professionals in this city than the ones that show up to these meetings and show up to their office and plug in. It is important that you do that. We're here for you. If I can help you in any way, just let me know. With that, I finished 4 minutes early. But I took 2 minutes of your time last month, and I promised you those 2 minutes back, if you remember. So there you go. I gave you 2 and I raised you 2. Anything else, Leslie or Katie?
That was actually impressive. Thank you for getting the time right on last month and this month and making us whole. Thank you, Chris, and thank you all for staying with us. We hope you have a happy Valentine's Day, happy Wednesday, and we will see you next month at our next State of the Industry. Bye, everyone.